The whole history of software from 1960 until 2022 was you would take a filing cabinet and you turn it into a database. The cool thing now is the filing cabinet can do work. That's the core idea from Atlassian CEO Mike Cannon-Brookes, talking with Alex on the A16Z show. And it reframes the whole SaaS apocalypse panic. Welcome to X-Pulse Digest. The interesting part isn't the market freakout, it's what changes when software stops being a place you store information and starts being a thing that executes processes. The episode starts with a blunt history lesson. In 1960, Sabre Systems was built by IBM and American Airlines to take airline reservations out of literal vaults of filing cabinets and into an early database. After that, the same pattern repeats across categories: electronic health records, CRMs, HR, finance. Every filing cabinet becomes a database. And yet, Mike's point is quietly brutal. A lot of this didn't truly make the world that much more efficient. You used to send a human to fetch the HR file for Eric. Now it's in Workday. But you also need a CISO to make sure Workday doesn't get hacked, IT to provision accounts, SSO setup, governance, all the modern overhead. Databases unlocked collaboration across offices and complex joins you can't do on paper, sure. But most of the time, the software still couldn't think. It just held the file. That sets up the shift. If QuickBooks, Workday, Jira, Zendesk, whatever you use, can actually accomplish tasks instead of waiting for a human to retrieve the file, then a lot of old assumptions about software value, pricing, and workflows get shaky fast. The public markets part is less about a single truth and more about mass uncertainty. Mike frames it as investors trying to price software businesses during a highly disruptive stage, where everyone has a different version of the future and they all feel plausible. The risk level has gone up, so investors step back and watch. There's also a psychological trap in the fear. A lot of doom is built on a static worldview, the idea that AI changes one thing and the company's customers and products don't adapt. Mike basically rejects that. Atlassian's been having strong quarters, but the market is asking, sure, but what if AI can do that in 2 or 3 years? He's not defending all of software. He's explicit that not every SaaS company will thrive through the next decade, just like plenty didn't make earlier platform transitions. Some products won't die, they'll just turn into cash flow streams. But for Atlassian, he calls this the best thing that's happened to our business, because they live in a knowledge world and now have tools that can act on knowledge, not just store it. That's the optimistic thread, but it only makes sense if you can tell which SaaS businesses get stronger when the filing cabinet starts doing work and which ones get exposed. Alex offers a simple taxonomy that's more useful than most hot takes. He thinks the public markets are treating very different SaaS companies as if they're the same animal. Bucket 1 is where seats are tied to outcomes, and AI can remove the need for those seats. Zendesk is his example. If customer support work can be done by an AI system, then how many seats does a Zendesk customer need might be potentially 0. If the company never changes its code or pricing, he claims that per-seat revenue stream goes to 0. The flip side is, it could also expand if they pivot to outcome-based pricing, but the default no adaptation path is ugly. Bucket 2 is per-seat pricing that feels fair, but the seats aren't actually tied to producing the outcome. Workday charging per employee per month is his example. Those employees aren't logging in to do the work, it's more like a fairness heuristic. In that world, Alex argues, Workday is fine, and maybe better than fine, because the AI work gets deployed through systems that already hold the data. If Workday is the system of record, it can start doing tasks like reference checks, calling the 3 companies you claim you worked at. Then there are the in-between cases, like Adobe, where seat counts might change, but it's not as binary. The sting in this section is the claim that investors can't tell the difference between these buckets. And if you buy that, then a lot of the fear isn't about software dying. It's about not knowing which pricing models survive when work gets automated. One of the more surprising threads is how much software pricing is about human emotion, not economics. Alex pulls from Dan Ariely's Predictably Irrational with a locksmith story. If the locksmith shows up and solves your problem in 90 seconds and charges $500, you're furious. If the locksmith struggles for 9 hours and finally gets you in, you're grateful. You tip. You leave a 5-star review. Humans will pay for incompetence because it feels fair. That's the lens he uses to explain why per-seat pricing stuck. Provisioning an extra digital seat can be close to zero cost, but it feels fair that 500 seats costs more than 1. Mike pushes the conversation into what customers can control. He's skeptical that consumption-based or outcome-based pricing becomes the dominant model across software, because customers hate bills that feel like casino chips. With S3 storage, a gigabyte is a gigabyte, and you can move it, control it, predict it. With AI credits or tokens, customers don't know if vendor A's credits map to vendor B's credits. And worse, the vendor can ship new features that chew up credits overnight because users start clicking them. Even outcome pricing gets weird over time. If a tool cuts your customer service cost from 20 to 10, that's compelling in year 1. In year 2, the customer says, "Great, now get me to 5. The vendor says, "Without us, you'd be back at 20. The customer says, "But I live at 10 now, so where's the new value?" So you end up with a slightly unsexy truth. Pricing that customers understand and perceive as fair can be more durable than pricing that's theoretically aligned to value, but psychologically unmanageable. There's a subtle philosophical fight in the middle of the episode. Alex leans on systems of record, and Mike basically says the term is starting to sound like the floppy disk icon on the save button. Useful historically, but it smuggles in an industrial-era picture of a business as filing cabinets. Mike's alternative is cleaner. Businesses are processes, coordinated across teams, plus external rules like laws, governance, and compliance. In his framing, software value is increasingly about coordinating those processes cheaply, quickly, and consistently. He also splits processes into 2 types. Input-constrained work looks like customer service or legal. The world sends you a fixed amount of demand, questions from customers, NDAs, leases. If you get 10 times faster, you don't magically get 10 times more NDAs. You just do the queue more efficiently. Output-constrained work is different. Creative work, marketing, arguably software development, where you can always do more, and the constraint is imagination and prioritization. Efficiency gains there tend to expand output, not shrink headcount. That distinction matters because it changes what AI value looks like. Sometimes AI reduces the cost of a fixed queue. Other times it explodes the scope of what you can produce. And most businesses are messy hybrids where these processes have to link up, which is exactly where the edge cases live. Both of them take a swing at the idea that everyone will vibe code their own replacement for major enterprise software. Alex calls it preposterous and brings in David Ricardo's comparative advantage. You could grow your own food, weld your own aluminum, write your own HR system, but you probably shouldn't. Not because it's impossible, because it's an inefficient use of your time compared to what you're best at. Then he hits the more important point. Software isn't just what you can see. It's the buried edge cases learned over decades, like, what happens in Indiana if the person leaves and they're on maternity leave? Those rules are embedded. You don't replicate them from a prompt, you replicate them through painful experience. Mike's version is even more visceral. The idea I would vibe code my own Workday and then run it is terrifying. He also adds the pragmatic kicker. Even if you have brilliant engineers, you have other stuff you want them doing, and the downside risk is enormous. But the interesting twist is that vibe coding still matters, just not as a replacement story. It becomes an extensibility story. If you can cheaply build small, tailored apps on top of an existing platform's data and rules, you get customization without blowing up the core system. Mike paints a concrete example. Maybe the Miami office needs a conference room booking app with some weird HR policy used by 20 people. Before, you couldn't justify putting a tech team on it. Now, maybe you can. That doesn't make Workday weaker. It can make it stickier because the platform becomes the rails and the custom layer becomes affordable. And yes, Workday really is the butt of a lot of examples in this conversation, through no fault of its own. The episode keeps coming back to an uncomfortable observation. The models are already far ahead of the value most people are getting from them. Mike's proof is painfully simple. Give someone a chat box with unlimited power, and they ask it for a dad joke. The bottleneck isn't just model quality, it's trust and workflow design. Users are scared not because AI is powerful, but because it does stuff, and they don't know what it did, or whether it was right. If your AI agent says it sent 15 emails and cleared your inbox, you're not impressed, you're nervous. So the design challenge becomes, how does an agent come back and say, here's what I'm about to do, are you sure? Without being so annoying that you end up doing nothing but approving agent pop-ups all day. Mike compares it to having a lot of interns. You'll get a lot done, but you'll also get 50 questions a minute. Then there's context. Atlassian's teamwork graph can access organizational knowledge with insanely accurate relevance, but it can also pull irrelevant personal history. If it knows Mike wrote code in 2002, that might help it explain something, but it shouldn't drag that into every answer. Right now, users get hit with awkward choices like search the web or don't search, search my org or don't, even when they don't really understand what those toggles mean. This is where agentic workflows either click or collapse into paralysis. Too many loops, and it's frustrating. Not enough loops, and you don't trust it. The hard part is building an interface that makes the right amount of the machine visible at the right moment. They land on a practical example, where the interface is the product: document writing. Atlassian has features they call Create with Rovo, and it flips the default workflow. Instead of a blank page where you type headings and bullets, you can start with a prompt, generate a template, even ask it to research certain things. But the real shift is what happens after. The experience Mike describes is basically two panes. Most of the screen is the document. A smaller pane is chat. You can freely edit the document like normal, but you can also issue commands that operate across it, like add a new section after the summary, or even make every heading blue. And it just does it. Power users love this because they move fluidly between direct manipulation and higher-level commands. Regular business users, even smart ones, tend to ignore the chat pane and just type on the left, because that's how they've been trained for decades. That's a key point that's easy to miss if you live on AI Twitter. It's not a Harry Potter spell prompt world. It's a learning curve world, like the first mobile apps that were just tiny web pages until new patterns emerged. The design isn't just how to generate output, it's how to let humans iterate on it, control it, and trust it, without needing to understand what an LLM is doing in the background. The most useful reframe in this episode is that AI doesn't just change software, it changes the unit of value from storing information to executing processes. When that happens, the winners aren't automatically the flashiest agent demos, and the losers aren't automatically old SaaS. The real dividing line sounded more human than technical. Do customers feel pricing is fair and controllable? Do the tools embed the messy edge cases of reality? Can design earn trust while quietly turning knowledge into action? If you want the full texture, the back and forth between Mike Cannon-Brookes and Alex on the A16Z show is worth your time, especially if you're trying to decide whether you're watching a SaaS apocalypse or a SaaS upgrade. And it leaves you with a sharper question than, will AI replace software? What happens when your software stops asking you to do the work and starts asking permission to do it for you?